assassination attempt on the most popular presidential candidate in America. Now is the time to be informed.
The worst president in the history of our country took over, and look what happened to our country. Probably 20 million people. And you know, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Thank you for watching the Citizens Report. My name is William Donahue. For today's show, I'm going to be covering the Trump assassination attempt, Biden's NATO summit, some news about illegals, and news about transhumanism and kind of where technology is heading. Before I get into all that, please like and share this video, subscribe to my channel, check out my YouTube shorts. They're great. The songs that go with them, I put a lot of time into things. And I try and take the things I've said here, just recording with no script, and I try and cut it up so that it kind of is more of what I was trying to say. So I hope everyone goes and checks those out, and like and share those as well. As everyone's probably heard, Donald Trump was shot yesterday in his right ear. The bullet, luckily, was an inch away from ending his life, and luckily we made it out with our presidential candidate. Someone else wasn't so lucky, Corey Comportor, a former fire chief who was in the crowd. Other people were also injured. From what I know, he's the only one that passed away. So prayers and thoughts for his family. Thomas Matthew Crooks was the shooter. He was killed on the scene, and I guess we'll never be able to hear his side of the story or what he had to say, but there's some weird things going around about him and about the whole thing. So I'm going to kind of lay out the facts of what I know. Basically, Trump was shot in an assassination attempt at Pennsylvania rally. What we know: former President Donald Trump was rushed off stage Saturday evening after being shot in the right ear during an assassination attempt at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. Secret Service agents crowded Trump, who raised a fist towards a crowd of supporters in Butler, Pennsylvania, which is about a 45-minute drive north of Pittsburgh. Trump was fine after the shooting, his campaign said, and he was checked out at a local medical facility. So Trump wrote, "I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong, in that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening." So Donald Trump literally got shot right in the ear. If that had been over a little bit anywhere, we would not have our presidential candidate. So that could have been very bad for the country. I think probably the country would have been out of control. I don't know what would have happened. I don't promote violence or anything, but I think that there would have been a lot of angry people. I don't know if people would have got violent or what would have happened, but the things that could have unfolded if that happened would have been detrimental for this country, I think. So, the bullet was shot at his right ear, and in this picture right here, you can actually see the bullet. Someone caught a picture of the bullet midair. It looks like it's about this long because it's moving so fast. And you can see part of his ear missing and the bullet going right by. So that was a lucky miss for the United States. So like I said, some things seemed a little off about the whole thing, mostly Secret Service and not having the perimeter secured, and the snipers, the counter snipers that were on the roof, and the whole thing. So Dan Bongino used to be a Secret Service agent. He's probably the best guy to speak on it, and here's a clip of him reacting to the assassination attempt of President Donald Trump.
Anthony Guglielmi has to be very careful about what they put out. You know, he says in his X post, and you can read it yourself, you don't need to hear it from me, that they deployed these extra resources and technology. Okay, well, which ones? You're telling me the best technology you have was deployed and you missed a shooter 130 yards? Say it was 200 yards. The Secret Service CS team, Pete, the counter sniper teams, and I'm not sure those two guys are Secret Service. We have, remember, that we don't always, when we go to New York sometimes with high-level protectees, we'll use NYPD ESU counter snipers. So I'm not really sure either way, they'd still be briefed in. The question we have to ask is, if that's the best technology we have, and we had a CS team up there with a shooter that, you know, we're trained out to 1,000 yards in the Secret Service with the counter sniper team, how did they miss someone at most, you know, 1/5 of the way there? It doesn't make any sense. And even worse, it's broad daylight on a white roof. So, again, open questions here. Was there forward-looking infrared deployed? Was there aerial support, drones, helicopters? To be clear, we're a $4 trillion United States government, and we can't fork over enough money to keep our people alive? And then you're sending out tweets like, oh, this is the best technology we have. Really? To let a sniper 150 yards away from the potential next president shoot a piece of his ear off? That's your victory lap? Give me a break, man.
So like Dan Bongino kind of insinuated there, the Secret Service director is going to have to do some serious damage control. There's a ton of articles like this going around. Who runs the Secret Service? Kimberly Chattel under fire after Trump attack. So in the corner here, this picture is basically showing you where the shooter was in relation to Trump and the counter sniper team that was on the roof. They were on the roof looking in that direction because there's videos showing them looking through binoculars at the guy, looking through the scope at the guy before the shooting started. So they definitely noticed the guy. Plus, there was people in the crowd who have been interviewed, and they say that they warned police and warned Secret Service and pointed out the shooter. So this clip is an example of one of those witnesses, and you know, it begs the question, why didn't they pull Trump off stage? Why didn't they take the guy out before it got to that point? Just kind of seems like odd, if not intentional, in my opinion.
But we noticed the guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us. So we're standing there, you know, we're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle.
A rifle.
We could clearly see him with a rifle. Absolutely. We're pointing at him. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, hey, man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle. And the police were like, huh, what? You know, like they didn't know what was going on. You know, we're like, hey, right here on the roof. We can see him from right here. We see him. You know, he's crawling. And next thing you know, I'm thinking to myself, why is Trump still speaking? Why have they not pulled him off the stage? I'm standing there pointing at him for, 2-3 minutes. Secret Service is looking at us from the top of the barn. I'm pointing at that roof, just standing there like this. And next thing you know, 5 shots ring out.
So you're certain that the shots came from that guy on the roof?
100%. 100%.
And he was up there for a couple of minutes?
He was up
you
there.
You saw him up there for a couple of minutes?
Absolutely. At least 3 to 4 minutes.
And you were telling the police and the Secret Service?
We were telling the police. We were pointing at him for the Secret Service, who were looking at us from the top of the barn. They were looking at us the whole time when we were standing by that tree.
Could they see
binoculars?
Could they see him?
Probably not, because the roof, the way the slope went, he was behind where they could see. But why is there not Secret Service on all of these roofs here? I mean, this is not a big place.
Did you see, I mean, obviously everyone, when the shooting started, everyone was very panicked. Did you see what happened to him at all?
Oh yeah, they blew his head off.
Okay, sorry.
Secret Service blew his head off.
Okay, just be careful because we don't quite know who's watching. But you're pretty sure they shot the guy.
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
Yep.
You saw that happen?
Yep.
Okay.
So in the corner of the screen here, you're going to see the aftermath of the shooting. You're going to see the moment when Donald Trump stands up and he raises his fist. And then the cameraman was in the crowd on the lawn in front of the stage. He turns to the left and shows what I believe is Corey Comporator and the police jumping over the fence to recover his body. So I'm going to play two clips back to back. One is a clip of a guy walks after the whole thing kind of, the chaos settles down. This guy walks up to the media who's all behind the crowd on the lawn, and he's saying, this is your fault. You're to blame for this. And what he's basically saying is the media's coverage of Trump and painting him all the different ways that they do as a racist and every other name in the book is partially responsible for radicalizing somebody to want to do something like this. And then I'm going to play a clip after that of a ton of figures, political figures, calling for violence against Republicans and against Trump, and specifically calling for the assassination of Trump. So, as to keep things fair, we held Trump accountable for January 6th, or they tried to, for organizing this riot, which was not violent. No one brought any firearms or anything like that. So they tried to hold him accountable, even though he said march peacefully. This clip is the opposite. This is them calling for the assassination of Trump. So I believe that they should be, brought to select committee hearings and all that stuff to answer for inciting this assassination attempt. So here's the two clips.
You remember what you caused. This is your fault. You. This is your fault. Every last one. This is your fault. It is your fault. This is your fault. You. This is your fault. I got you. Easy. Thank you, sir. Your fault. This is your fault. You.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
There needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick them.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
Look as his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him?
That's it right there. Pull it up.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
A Missouri state senator is under investigation by the Secret Service after saying she hopes President Trump is assassinated.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
So just to wrap that section up, everyone I've talked to, their reaction to this is that assassination attempt just won Trump the presidency. And I agree. I think that you're seeing more support behind Donald Trump. You're seeing people rally behind him. You're seeing support from people who didn't support Donald Trump. 50 Cent, did his concert with Donald Trump's face on the screen in the background. And I think that this, the hand raising, 50 Cent, Kid Rock, these are all historical things that are going to be seen as when people united for their own common good. So now going into Biden. His re-election campaign in crisis. Joe Biden hosts high-stakes NATO summit in Washington. President Joe Biden faces a pivotal moment this week as he prepares to host the leaders of more than 31 nations in Washington. So he's hosting the NATO summit, NATO 2024 summit in Washington. The Washington summit will strengthen NATO's relationship with Ukraine as allies convene for the second meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council at the leaders' level. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will sit with allied leaders to discuss further alliance support for Ukraine in its ongoing fight to defend itself, its freedom, sovereignty, and territorial integrity against Russian aggression. As NATO tries to adopt Ukraine as a member and expand their territory towards Russia, they're calling it Russian aggression. So they're going to commit $43 billion to the Ukraine war next year. And in the meantime, I don't think that they're going to provide any aid, which is going to be rough for Ukraine because I think between now and the end of the year, they're going to be down on supplies, and I think as far as this goes, this is what they're committing to for next year, and I don't think they're going to give any more aid this year. So I have two clips here that I'm sure everyone saw. One of them is of Biden calling Kamala Harris President Trump, and the other one is of Biden calling Zelensky President Putin. So here they are.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one. The fact is that the consideration is that I think I'm the most qualified person to run for president. I beat him once, and I will beat him again. Now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
So this week in the NATO summit was supposed to be Biden's chance to go out and redeem himself for the terrible performance at the debate. Right after the debate, he went on a radio show where his campaign gave the interviewer pre-selected questions. Now, this is like a no-no in journalism. You're not supposed to take pre-selected questions because then you're not providing the listener with an honest, transparent interview. So she left the radio station after admitting that she did that. And that just exposes that Biden at least tries to have everything scripted with every interviewer and everything that he does for the most part. This campaign is doing a very careful job of trying to set everything up to make it so that he can't fail. And yet the whole time there's just been incident after incident, pretty much for years, but especially lately. So Whoopi Goldberg on The View says, I don't care if Biden has pooped his pants and can't put a sentence together. That's a basic summary of what she said. The View co-host Whoopi Goldberg admitted this week she would vote for Joe Biden regardless of his clearly deteriorating mental state as long as it means keeping Donald Trump from retaking the White House. I don't care if he's, meaning Biden, pooped his pants. I don't care if he can't put a sentence together. Show me he can't do the job, and then I'll say, okay, maybe it's time to go, she told the audience. Well, Whoopi, if you want proof, take a look at the southern border, take a look at the economy, take a look at our oil reserves being drained, take a look at oil production, take a look at the instability and insecurity of us remaining the world reserve currency. And that should tell you enough to know that he can't do the job. So, on the NATO summit, Ukraine and Poland signed security agreement, commit to form Ukrainian Legion in Poland. That right there, an attack on one is an attack on all, so NATO's going to take it as anything that happens to this Legion is an attack on Poland and everyone needs to jump in. So this is a massive escalation or a massive weak point in holding back, in the dam that's holding back World War III. Explosion rocks Arkansas weapons factory that produced missiles and other armaments for Ukraine. So that's going to hurt our budget and hurt the aid that we are sending. This factory, they have initially said that it was a pyrotechnics thing, but then later came out and said that the weapons started exploding in the factory. I'm not sure what happened with that. I'm sure you could look it up and find out if somebody has been charged for that or if it was just a mistake. So this article and this article kind of contradict each other, but I like Viktor Orban. So Viktor Orban says China has a peace plan. America has a war policy after he went and visited China. So that might be how he felt. But this article came out. Chinese troops have never been so close to the Polish border in history. So they might not, they might have a peace plan, but they might not be using that plan because they're locating troops in basically near the border of Poland. They've been doing drills in Canada to practice in snowy terrain. North American terrain. They flew spy weather balloons over the United States. So that is Viktor Orban's take on that. I'm not sure what they've talked about in private conversations, but I hope he's right. House Dems vote. This is my illegal alien section, by the way. House Dems launch united effort against election bill requiring voters to prove citizenship. So this would allow illegal aliens to vote, they say. I think that the laws are already on the books, and I don't really understand. But basically, the way that I've heard it described is that this bill would give them the ability to enforce this measure. The law already exists, but there's nothing in place for the enforcement of our election integrity and proof of citizenship. So, House passes bill to ban non-citizens from voting in federal elections. So the House voted on it. It goes to the Senate. The president can veto it. It can go back to the Senate to be voted on to override the president, and then it has to go through the Supreme Court. So it's not set in stone that this is passed, but it would be a big win for the United States if our government would do what's right and stop this border invasion. So this is happening in Germany. Like I showed you the file last week of all the illegal immigrant crimes. Germany, Nigerian migrant stabs 9-year-old boy and stabs 2 police officers, immediately released by the court. So that is ridiculous. I mean, he grabbed a 9-year-old, stabbed 2 police officers, and then gets to walk out free, which is completely ridiculous. I mean, anyone else wouldn't be allowed to do that, but is it because he's a migrant that he's allowed to get out free? Or what? Because I don't think that a German citizen would be able to stab 2 police officers and then be released on his own recognizance or whatever. ERO Washington, D.C. enforcement action results in sentencing of Honduran child rapist for receiving child sexual abuse material, assaulting federal officer in Virginia. So, it's kind of weird, but a lot of the illegal alien crimes that I find that I can report on, because I'll look into it a little bit and try and cover, certain topics. Illegal aliens is a big topic in the political realm right now. So I'll look things up like this, but it's weird because most of the time it's usually preying on a young person. So that is a serious concern. Our children are the future and they should be top priority. This is also from Germany. Welfare costs exploding in Germany. 47.3% of recipients are foreigners. So almost half of welfare recipients are foreigners, and the cost of it is costing tax-paying working people a ton of money. And then getting into the transhumanism technology section. WEF scientists unveil supercomputers powered by lab-grown human brains. These people want to make a better world and they want to stop climate change and all this stuff, but they're messing around with this. Now, when you think of a brain hooked up to a computer, don't you picture like a spacesuit guy with a fishbowl head and a floating brain in there, and him being like the supervillain that rules the galaxy? I know that's kind of a stretch, but what are we doing? Hooking up a brain to a supercomputer and that's connected to AI, and then, I mean, what if, I don't know. Nobody knows what things like this are capable of, so to just hook it up and let it run and see what happens is like completely ridiculous. It's almost like somebody wants to intentionally destroy the world or something, because how do you justify this? And how do you justify the good versus the bad being weighed out and thinking that this might have more positive benefits than negative benefits? More disabled Canadians are speaking out against pressure to choose assisted suicide. So while the WEF, the World Economic Forum, is spending money on stupid stuff like this, disabled people are being told that there's no cure for their condition and they can offer medical assistance in dying, MAID. It's a Canadian medical procedure that's legal in Canada, where you can be put into a chamber and the doctor does what they do and you die. You are medically assisted in dying because you're, whatever your handicap is or whatever your disease is untreatable. So the only medical procedure or cure that they can offer you to not have to deal with your problem anymore is medical assistance in dying, instead of fixing whatever it is that's wrong with you and showing some kind of evidence that all the money that's been donated to cancer research, diabetes, heart disease, all these, foundations, the National Heart Association and whatever, that it hasn't slowed down any of these things. It's only gotten worse in every area, even with all the foundations and donations. and now you're being offered medical assistance and dying because you can't get a cure for something that's raised tons and tons of money, is my point. I'm not saying that there's something going on, but I mean, you gotta look at the amount of money these people make. All their stadiums are sponsored by insurance companies, and doctors, and hospitals. Whole stadiums, whole TV shows are sponsored by these foundations, and celebrities have special wings in the hospitals, but there's no real growth that I've seen that is lowering these numbers. There might be growth in scientific advancements that they announce here and there, but there's not a downtrend in these numbers below what it was before all these foundations were created. So this here, the Hope Accord, a bunch of doctors, nurses, regular people, all got together. So they're saying the number is 811 medical doctors, 2,102 other healthcare professionals, 867 scientists, and 22,501 concerned citizens have signed this petition, the Hope Accord, and they're hoping to have the immediate suspension of the COVID-19 mRNA vaccine. So that is a big deal because they're still selling these shots that were, in my opinion, falsely advertised about and built up to be a stop of transmission, which never happened. And, a lot of stuff has come out as far as side effects and admissions and all these things, but there hasn't been any consequence for the misleading, and, we're seeing people gather together, which is a good sign. And then this, New Zealand government announces livestock genetic engineering initiatives. So, I've reported on it a lot that our food, our water, our livestock, crops, every aspect of everything faces attacks constantly, whether it's food production places burning down, the culling of entire flocks of chicken, or, stables full of cows because of positive PCR test for the bird flu, which PCR can be manipulated. You've seen every angle of everything as far as regulatory restrictions on things that, like take raw milk, for example. Before pasteurization and the FDA and all that people drank was raw milk all the time. There's no other substitute or form or purification process. You drank raw milk. So now the FDA steps in and says that that's unsafe. So people who want to choose to drink raw milk, like all of civilization that survived and got us to the point where we are now, and maintained a population, drank raw milk, but the FDA says that it's not good. So now they give us milk from a cow that meets all their qualifications, but their qualifications are antibiotics, this, that, the other thing, and some people believe that that's unhealthy. So we've seen the government push to have things their way, which generally is the opposite of what is natural from my observations. And New Zealand government announces livestock genetic engineering initiatives, which means that they're going to pay to see genetic engineering of livestock be advanced and be put on the market, whether it's to replace meat or whether it's to, to replace natural meat or whatever the current thing is, or whether it's to infiltrate the market and be a competitor, which might be cheaper if they could keep the animals alive longer or grow them faster or whatever they have to do to modify them. But it's not the image that God created of that animal. So it's altering nature, and in my opinion, that is wrong. So that's all I have. I hope that you enjoyed the show. I hope that you enjoyed my breakdown of the assassination attempt on Trump. I will probably be recording another show in the next couple days, so look out for that. Also, look out for Turf Talk Sports Podcast if you're into sports. My little brother does Turf Talk Sports Podcast, so I was on his show. We did a live stream, and he gave me a shout-out on there, so I'm going to give him a shout-out here. Go check out Turf Talk Sports, and that's all I have. So have a good night. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching The Citizens Report with William Donahue. On this show, we search for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of the world around us through the lens of an American citizen.